Buenas noches, gente. Qué noche que nos espera, una noche hermosa, hermosa y con la previa justamente del Batman Day. Estoy realmente emocionado con el invitado que hoy tenemos, porque es un invitado que realmente es una leyenda, pero como siempre digo, no puedo estar solo en estas entrevistas, ya que somos un dúo dinámico con este señor. Yo vendría a ser Robin, que soy el más jovencita, el señor es Batman, pero bienvenido, señor Mario.
Mirá vos, gracias, gracias por el halago. Pero todos somos de la Bat Family hoy. Hoy somos todos Bat Family y obviamente vamos a festejar el Batman Day, una previa al Batman Day. Y estoy muy contento de poder hablar con esta semejante leyenda del cómic.
Así que sin más, me parece que sin más vueltas, vamos a presentar a nuestro invitado número 17 de Protagonistas del Cómic. Our 17th guest of Protagonistas del Cómic, Mr. Chuck Dixon.
Hello.
What an honor, sir. What an honor, sir. What
Real
an
honor, sir.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
We're huge fans of your work, and it's a real pleasure to have you here on the channel and have the chance to speak with you. It's a total pleasure.
Oh, well, it gives me a chance to say hello to all my Argentinian fans. So thank you.
You have many of them.
I'm a big fan of Argentinian comics and Argentinian comic creators. So
we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Sir, I can see there behind you in the shelves, you have an amount action figures, a lot of action figures. I love it.
Yeah, the two shelves behind me are all Bane. They're all Bane action.
Oh!
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah.
It's a very peculiar.
You have no
character.
spoiler. You have no spoiler figures.
I can see one from my desk, but those shelves are the shelves of Bane. They are reserved for Bane.
What is your favorite? Any particular?
Action figure?
Yes.
I don't know. I like the original animated one, from the 90s. That's pretty cool. So
it's really cool.
But they're all, it's just a thrill to me to see that many toys based on something I had something to do with. It's amazing.
It's brilliant. I love that TV series. We love it. We
love it.
Big fans.
Yeah. It was neat because the guys who worked on it, they were at DC Comics offices quite a bit. So we really did work together. The cartoon people and the comic book people were working hand in hand at that time.
I think that was what make it special, that series, because it has a lot of comic influence and a lot of heart and a lot of love for the characters,
Yeah, they spent a lot of time at DC. They were I don't know if DC has this anymore, but at the time they had a library, and it was every DC comic book in hardcover. They had bound them in hardcover. And, I ran into Paul Dini and Bruce Timm a lot of times in that library, and they would just be looking up things from Batman's history to use on the show. So they were very serious about staying true to the source material.
Yeah, of course, of that, because it's the greatest TV show of all time for us. The animated shows for all times for us.
Yeah.
For us, and also Fleischer's Superman, of course.
Yeah, I like that stuff too.
Superman animated,
Superman animated series too.
Yeah,
was good too.
Yeah, it was good stuff. I mean, like I said, they were true to the source material, and that's why it was so successful. They presented the comic material in animated form, and plus they're super talented guys. So,
well, Mr. Dixon, to s- to start the interview, I would like to tell us about your comic book beginnings. How you begin in the comic book industry? Were you a comic book fan before you got into the industry?
Yeah, I lived and breathed comic books. I can't remember my first comic book. I read comic books before I could read, and I always knew I wanted to be a part of them. I always wanted to do something in comics. First, I wanted to be an artist, but I didn't have the discipline, so I became a writer, which requires no discipline. So, I just wanted to make stuff up and make it up in comic form. I just love the medium so much.
Mhm.
So.
And how did you get in the comic book industry? How did you how was how were your steps to get into the industry? Because I know it's not easy. It's not easy. You
No.
have to try. You have to present portfolios, scripts in the lately in the cons or wherever you can.
Well, it was a mixture of ignorance and confidence. I just kept I just kept pushing and pushing. I would go to conventions, and I would never hand. I would back then editors would come to the convention, so you could meet the various editors from the various companies. And I always tried to meet the editors who edited the comics that I liked, because I thought, well, if they like the same comics I like because they helped create them, then I have a rapport with them. I have something in common with them. And I would never bring scripts or plot lines or even discuss story. I would just meet them and just talk to them. And so they would remember me. So then I would call the company and ask for an interview. And then they would say, oh, you're that guy I was talking to at the convention. Yeah, I remember you. And if I was lucky, I would get interviews. But I went for a lot of interviews and didn't get anywhere for a really long time because sales of comic books in the United States were really, really low at that time, and they were laying people off. I mean, they were firing and laying people off who were longtime pros. So what chance did I have? And then in the 80s, when comics started to make a comeback and they really needed talent, that was my break. And I got Larry Hama at Marvel hired me to work for him, mostly on
G.I. Joe,
Conan.
sir?
Huh?
G.I. Joe?
Yeah.
G.I. Joe?
Yep.
Oh my God, I love G.I. Joe. I
Yeah.
really love G.I. Joe. I had the action figures from Kenner. Remember the action figures
Yeah.
from Kenner?
I
The tiny ones.
Yeah, I remember them well because Larry's office was filled with them.
He create all the sketches, all the military files and everything.
Oh yeah, he's the genius behind GI
Oh
Joe. I
my
mean, he's
God,
why
I
GI
love
Joe is
it.
popular, and he hired me to write a number of things, and eventually got me to work on Savage Sword of Conan, which was my first full-time job. And at the same
Oh,
time, I got a book called Airboy at a company called Eclipse, and so I went, full-time finally after years and years of trying to get in.
sir, I have to ask you about GI Joe, but which was your favorite Joe, and which was your favorite Cobra team
Uh,
from the Cobra team?
Well, I actually got to write GI Joe for a while at IDW, and my favorite GI Joe to write was Scarlet, and
Oh,
my favorite Cobra was the Baroness.
The
But
oh,
Baron.
the girls,
but
the
I
two
liked
girls.
writing Baroness and Destro together because
Yeah.
Yeah.
there was so much tension between the two of them. So I liked writing them together.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Larry created a comic book, based on a toy, and it's so much better than it needed to be. I mean, he put so much work into it. So,
Yes, the names.
It was like things work on that era because with it also happened with He-Man. The
mhm,
Master
there
of the
was a
Universe.
toy line. There was a toy line, and they created the comics, and
right.
then the series, and it was a
Yeah.
huge success.
Yeah, Transformers as well. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean that was the era of the toy comic tie-in. But I think GI Joe is the king of them all. because of Larry's involvement.
Yeah.
Here are some fans of yours. I'm your fan, Chuck. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Horatio.
Elias Cancela. Hello, Mr. Dixon. I really love most of your work.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mr.
Bueno,
Dixon,
Agus también había saludado también.
I was no encuentro. No encuentro.
Fans from fans, decía. Fans from fans.
Well, Mr. Dixon, we're going to start with this. Can you tell us what is this?
That's Evangeline. That's the first regular comic I worked on for a company called Kamiko, and that's Ricardo Villagran on that cover painting. So that was my first time I worked with Ricardo back then.
What was the comic about? It was a fantasy comic, space opera.
Fiction. It was a science fiction comic about a space traveling nun, and basically she was like a James Bond for the Vatican in the future.
Very interesting.
I love it.
You know, when I saw the images, here in Argentina we have a comic called Bárbara. That it has with Sanoto and Barreiro that has some similitudes with the Evangeline. That's why I put the comic, because when I saw it, it's so similar, and it's the style of of that time, you know.
Right. Yeah, I'm very familiar with Barbara, and very familiar with. I got to work with Juan Zanato on a mini series here in the United States. So
well, recently that saga of Barbara got collected in 2 trades here in Argentina for the first time. Time here in Argentina, in 2 huge trades in black and white. So when we got the chance to pick it up, we pick it up because it was
very nice.
Cool stuff. We're gonna move on. We're gonna go directly to the Batman Day celebration, special celebration, let's say. Tell us about this. When you get the chance to write, how you got the chance to write Tim Drake, how you got introduced to Tim Drake.
Well, Denny O'Neil was the group editor on Batman at the time, and he read my book Airboy at Eclipse, which featured a young hero, and he liked the way I wrote a younger character. So he brought me in, and at first I wasn't sure I was right for it, because I told him Robin's really not my favorite character. And he explained why Robin was important in the Batman universe, and I gained an appreciation. So finally I said, yeah, okay, I'd be interested in tackling it. And I gave him a story. I knew basically what the story had to be. The first story had to be Tim Drake in training. He basically goes overseas to train in martial arts and things like that. So I knew what the first story had to be, and it went along well, and it sold extraordinarily well. DC was very happy, and at that point, I was firmly in the Batman camp. I mean, Denny liked my writing, and we got along well. So that's where it all began.
Sir, sorry, Kat. I want to ask you this. You put your experience to Tim in the field of the detective field, or it was just a premise from the editorial?
Well, I mean, the character is created by Marv Wolfman and then further developed by Alan Grant, and I basically just followed what they wanted me to do.
Okay.
Denny's main interest was that I make Tim as different from Jason Todd as I could, because Jason Todd had failed as a character with the readers. And so I kind of looked at who Jason Todd was, and they made Tim Drake different from him. That he wasn't as brash, he wasn't as reckless, he was more of an intellectual character, and he was more involved on the detective side and also technological side. So Tim Drake is kind of a technological upgrade to the Batman universe.
Can you believe, Mr. Dixon, that Jason Todd now is a huge celebrity instead of Tim Drake? he went from underdog to huge celebrity, being the Red Hood.
The readers used to hate him. I mean, that's why they killed him. They phoned in, they had a telephone poll, and they voted to kill a comic book character, and it was Jason Todd. So, it's, everything changes, right?
Now he's the huge leader of the Suicide Squad from Brian Azzarello's squad,
and a huge character in the Titans series, live action series, and it's incredible how
and three Jokers.
The Jokers. There's a lot of Jason Todd lately in DC, and it seems that it's the character in use now, the character that they love to use in a lot of projects. Right. And one of the things that I like from your run was this personality that you put on Tim, and that was like this guy who cares to be Robin and cares to be Batman at the same time, and have this background that he knew. For example, in issue from 0 Hour number 0, I think, when he meets Dick Grayson, young Dick Grayson, and he begins to talk with him, and he remembers Jason Todd, and he says, why don't you trust me? Batman always trusts me.
Right.
And he remembers Jason, and this thing that has Tim Drake, it's awesome. And what I was gonna ask you is something that Mario asked. This part of the consciousness of Tim Drake, or how he thinks about being Robin, wasn't much more explained in the Alan Grant and Brave Fogel storylines. Run. It was much more detail on your run.
Well, I had a lot more time with the character. I mean, that was my job. I was basically the Robin expert there for a long time. I was the guy guiding the career, and with Denny, of course. And my job was to basically make him popular and not have him fail as a character. And we succeeded, but it's based on what Alan began. I can't take that away, and Marv Wolfman as well. I mean, they gave me a good grounding, and then it was up to me to basically not screw it up.
But you got the 12 issue miniseries, two follow-ups, a series of Robin, and the at least I think it was 70 numbers of the actual regular run of Robin.
It was 100 issues.
100 issues. 70 was
issues.
The Nightwing, I think.
Yeah, Nightwing's around 70. But Robin was 100 issues. So I've written about 150 Robin comics altogether.
And with something that was very difficult at the moment, that was this thing of the crossovers, because when you got into the series, I think you were like, I don't know, 5 issues to do some interest story about Robin, and then you got in the middle of Nightfall, in the middle of Prodigal, in the middle of a lot of crossover.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
How you
But
manage that?
well, we would actually meet a couple of times a year for 3 or 4 days, and the whole creative team would be there, and we would map it all out under the guidance of Denny O'Neil, and we all got along well, and we all met our deadlines, on time and things like that. We were all very conscientious, and we worked well together. But it was a lot of intense, laying out of, this has to happen in this issue, and then this has to happen in this issue. I remember during, I think it was Contagion. My 2 books came out a week apart from each other. So I was writing Detective and Robin. And so the other guys couldn't continue their writing until those issues were done. And so I had to write issues in a day. So it didn't slow the process down, because I had to wait for them, and then they had to wait for me. And it got to the point where I couldn't work at home because we had kids. And so I would go to a hotel and just spend 3 days at the hotel doing those issues, doing nothing but writing, so that the other writers wouldn't get slowed down. But I loved it. So,
Sir, I want to ask you a question about Team Drake, Robin, and Nightwing. I love the crossover, the Brothers in Arms, that issue. It's brilliant, sir. It's brilliant because it's giving he's training legacy. Nightwing is giving passing the legacy to
Passing the torch.
Tim.
Passing the torch to the team.
Passing the torch to them. It's fabulous, that thing in the rooftops, talking about how is to be Robin, and also it's lovely, sir. That story, it's really lovely.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. That was a story the editors asked me to write. They said, you need a story where the 2 of them just meet and talk. And I couldn't just have them talk, so I threw some action in as well. But it's a popular issue. I sign a lot of them. People bring them for me to sign a lot. So,
okay.
There might be another issue that you must see usually to sign. You might usually sign it, that it was a Superman issue, Action Comics says 711, I think, that it's Nights in Metropolis, when Nightwing team ups with Superman, and it's cool because what I always see from your run with when you makes or where you when you write Nightwing, for example, is that Nightwing always has has Superman as an idol,
right,
and not Batman. He never thinks Batman is the best. He thinks Superman is the best. And in a lot of issues, and for example, the Christmas issues, this one here, then Nightwing 64, for example, here I'm going to show you. Here has some things that says that, like, what would Superman do? This is what Superman do.
Right.
And it doesn't say Batman. Are you a Superman fan, or it was something that?
Well, I kind of took the lead from Kelly Puckett, another writer. He began to write about Dick Grayson having this admiration for Superman, which made a lot of sense, given that Dick Grayson takes the name Nightwing from Superman, because remember, Superman's identity when he was in the bottle city of Kandor was Nightwing.
Exactly.
So Dick Grayson, who wouldn't want Superman as an idol? He seems like a more together guy than Batman. Batman seems rather troubled. And Kelly introduced this idea that Robin, even when Dick Grayson was Robin, he idolized Superman. But he also introduced the idea that Batman wasn't real happy about it, that Batman was always suspicious of Superman because Superman was not human. So I love the tension that Kelly created with that concept, and so I just continued to explore it whenever I had a chance.
It's great, sir. That relationship and I think that Tim Drake has an admiration for Batman because he
Yeah.
studied every single move, every single detail. So that's the other relationship, right?
Right. Yeah, Tim Drake's ideal is certainly Batman. I did stories where he was with Superman, and I think he was just sort of like in awe of Superman, but not really admiring him. Just sort of like he's like a god, and Tim Drake was never comfortable in my mind around Superman.
Exactly. That is something that when you read the comics, you notice because the relationship between, for example, Dick Grayson and Batman is so much smooth and easygoing than Tim and Superman. Superman and Tim is like a teacher and a student. It's like, okay, you are Superman, you're my teacher. I'm not gonna say anything about what you say. What you say is everything right.
Right.
And with Dick Grayson, it was this relationship that goes, comes and goes with sayings like there was an issue I don't remember right now, but indeed, Superman says that you're always reliable, not like Batman, and and
Right.
Dick
Yeah.
says something like, well, I like what you are, and you're a good guy, and that thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you worked on Robin, you were also working on two more series that were
Yeah.
Catwoman
Yes. Yeah.
and
I did a lot of Catwoman. Yeah.
Nightwing
Right.
at the same time. The
Yeah.
three at the same time.
Yeah. And then when I stopped Catwoman, I was working on Birds of Prey for a long time.
Exactly.
And also Green Arrow. So I always seemed to have 4 monthly titles at DC the whole time I was there.
Sir, did you enjoy to write Catwoman?
Oh yeah. Catwoman's fun because she's the only comic book superhero who seems to be happy with who she is. Well, she's not a superhero; she's a villain, but she seems to like herself and she seems to like what she does, and it's unusual for a comic book character because they're always so filled with angst or remorse or something. There's always like an inner sadness to all the superheroes because their origins are usually tragic. But Catwoman just likes stealing stuff. She's anti-authority, and I love a good robbery story, a good heist story. So Catwoman was to me a chance to write a new heist story every month because criminals are fun to write about. Totally amoral people like Catwoman. She's just a fun character.
Well, you have also a great partner that was Jim Ballen that was did an awesome job.
Jim was so into it, and Jim was just such a fun guy to be around. But he was, like all of us, just total comic geek and just totally into it. And it's great working with someone. That was one of the great things about working on Batman. Everybody was so enthused. Everybody was so aware of the fact that we're having a great time here, and we're entrusted with these iconic characters, and we're having a ball doing it.
Sir, you talk about anti-heroes like Catwoman and about heist and everything. Would you love to write Punisher?
Oh, I have written Punisher.
He did.
Oh,
yeah, Punisher is my favorite character to write. It's the only character I still think of stories for, even though I'm not paid to. So
I have a trilogy in my mind about Punisher.
Yeah, I don't know what it says about me, but I have an affinity for Frank Castle. He's an awesome character.
It's a complex character.
You did a war journal.
Yeah, I did War Journal. I did War Zone. I did the regular Punisher book. I did annuals, graphic novels, and specials. I mean, I was the go-to Punisher guy for a long time. When they canceled his 3 monthly titles, I was the writer on all of them right to the end. So I did quite a bit of Punisher.
Did you enjoy the Ennis stuff?
The what? Garth thought of something I should have thought of. I always kick myself. He gave Punisher a law enforcement antagonist, a cop who was always trying to find him. And I thought, wow, I wish I'd thought of that. No one had thought of that before Garth. It was just a brilliant idea. But yeah, Garth and I have a mutual admiration society when it comes to the Punisher. We like each other's work.
Like Sam Gerard in the Fugitive, right? Exactly.
Or Les Miserables. But that was brilliant. That was brilliant. He did it. I just wish I'd thought of
it. Since you mentioned you're a fan of Punisher, what do you think? What's your favorite movie of the Punisher?
I like parts of the Thomas Jane movie because they stole stuff from the comic that Johnny Romita Jr. and I did for the story. So it's kind of neat to see our scene up on the big screen. But for the most part, I just don't think they get the character right. They don't seem to understand. He's complex and yet he's very simple. He's very primal character, and I think they try to make him too complex emotionally. He's a broken man. I mean, he's and he's sort of like past all of emotions, and I don't think they were. And the other mistake they make a lot of times is they write him as like he's a detective, and he's not a detective.
No.
A detective would catch a criminal and then want to know who's above him. Frank just kills the criminal and hopes that who's above him comes after him.
Exactly. And you know that I love the story that short Dirty Laundry. Dirty Laundry is a very great action piece, and I can see the Punisher there. He is the Punisher, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dirty Laundry is my favorite kind of Punisher story. Because it's what we call in the United States a quality of life crime, that the Punisher will go after common criminals because the public is frustrated with common criminals. They don't get punished, they don't get caught, and here's a guy who does that, and it's great having Punisher meet Dr. Doom or whatever. But I think the best Punisher stories are the ones that take place on the street where he's tracking down carjackers or murderers or drug dealers. Those are the best ones.
Yeah, that was one of the huge successes of Garth Ennis stories because he grounded the character, and especially in the Max series when it was the Punisher versus the mob, and that was incredible.
Yeah, see, he was allowed to do that. When I was on the Punisher, they were always pushing for, well, have him meet Spider-Man, have him meet Moon Knight, things like that. And I would want to do. I did a story where Frank goes to McDonald's and he goes through the drive-through, and he's trapped in the drive-through line, and a bunch of guys come to kill him, and they just ram the back of his car, and there's this huge shootout outside of the fast food restaurant, and my editor hated it. Readers loved it. My editor hated it. And I'm like, yeah, but this is what makes the Punisher cool. I mean, you're not going to see, Superman or Wolverine doing this. Only the Punisher would do this kind of story.
Exactly.
Yes, I want a Big Mac and boom. Sir, I want to ask you about I love to talk with you a lot of hours about Punisher because it's one of my favorite characters. Because it's the more human, the most human character. But what do you think about the TV series from Netflix? Did you enjoy it?
It just gets a little too emotional. To me, Frank Castle's like Conan. He's like a force of nature. And
Yeah.
rather than make the story about Frank Castle, you create an interesting crime story and then insert Frank Castle in it. You stick him in the story and then see what happens. He's sort of a catalyst for action. And, I don't, and this is my problem with a lot of comic book movies and TV shows. They make them about the character instead of writing a good story first and then inserting the character into it. I always say that the third Die Hard movie with Bruce Willis is the best Batman movie I've ever seen because it's a Riddler story. Jeremy Irons is the Riddler.
Yes,
in that movie.
yes, sir.
And,
yes,
and
sir. Absolutely.
Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson are Batman and Robin, and they're doing all the detecting and everything else. And just like the Riddler, Jeremy Irons isn't leading them to the crime; he's leading them away from the crime. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, it's not a Batman movie, and I've never seen a Batman movie with that good a story. So
absolutely, sir. I always talk to Kyle. Die Hard with a Vengeance is one of my favorite.
But Mario, I'm gonna say something. I would buy and I would see a Batman movie with Die Hard 3 script as Mr. Dixon said.
Yes,
I would totally buy it. Totally buy it.
Yeah, and it will be an interesting thing. I think that Nolan could pick that. Could do that.
Possible. It's possible. I don't think his approach to the material is so different though, because his stories they're not complex enough for me. None of the Batman movies are complex enough. I mean, Batman Forever has the Riddler in it, and the only riddle that the Riddler gives them is his name, which they already know by the time they solve the riddle. It has nothing to do with his crimes. It's like, did you ever read or see a Riddler story? I mean, the television show got it better than that.
Yes.
Oh.
Frank Gorshin, of course.
Oh yeah. I mean, those are perfect Riddler template stories. They're absolutely perfect. He's a very difficult character to write. He's my favorite Batman villain, but I've rarely written him because the stories are hard to write.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, totally.
The riddles alone will drive you out of your mind because, I had all these riddle books and I still had to make riddles up.
So it's a powerful weapon. The mind is a powerful weapon.
Yeah.
So
and the idea that the riddles both lead you to the crime or away depending on your answer. I mean, that's not easy to write. It takes some lifting. So I've only written the Riddler maybe 3 times in 11 years on Batman.
Is he your favorite rogue from Batman?
Yeah, definitely. I like him because the way I wrote him was he was a loser from birth. Just a guy who, he would get a gang together, but he couldn't control them because they're all tougher than him. And he was always getting them in trouble because he was leaving these stupid riddles. He would come up with these ingenious crimes and then ruin them by sending riddles. He couldn't resist himself because he wanted to be a know-it-all. He wanted to be the smartest guy in the room, which, if you read about criminals, a lot of times that's their problem. They think they're so smart they can outwit the police. And they're not as smart as the police. They just think they are, and that's how they get caught. And to me, the Riddler was like the ultimate character like that.
Yeah, lately it's a guy that was very used in the Batman books, and also it was badly used. It's my opinion in the famous Batman Hash. Because it was like, okay, let's put the riddle. But
yeah, I used to put him in whenever anybody would visit Arkham Asylum. I would never show him, but you could hear someone from inside one of the cells saying, "I have a question," and I never said who it was. I just expect the readers to know that's the Riddler. I've got a question. And no one ever answered him. They knew better than to get involved in a conversation with him.
in the games, in the Arkham series games on PlayStation, Xbox, or whatever, The Riddler is always there, but it never confronts Batman or whatever. It's amazing. It's a great character, the Riddler.
Yeah, but he's, like I said, he's very hard to write. A lot of writers shy away from him, or they change him to avoid writing those riddles. It'll make you crazy.
Exactly.
Yes.
And one of the books that you said that you were writing, it was this one that we want to speak about now.
Oh.
Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
Birds of Prey.
Oh.
You put a lot of heart in this book, a lot of love about these three heroines, and I want to ask you something that it was always on the table of the comic book collectors. Which is the first appearance of the Birds of Prey? The Showcase 96, number 3, or the one-shot Black Canary Oracle?
The one shot, the one all the way to the left, is the first appearance. That's the first one I wrote. So,
because there was always this misunderstanding about that one has a date before the one shot, and it was like, well, actually, this one is the first appearance, because if it wasn't the original formation, it was a similar formation. It was Black Canary, it was Lois Lane, and then became the one shot. Appears the one shot, and that was the first introduction of the Birds of Prey. That was a huge success also, because it gave us a team of powerful women. It has a powerful message, and they were tough. And how was writing this team, and also how was writing Barrow as an oracle?
well, the credit for Birds of Prey goes to my editor, Jordan Gorfinkel, because he really created the title, and he wanted me to write it. And I didn't want to write it because I didn't see it. You know, he said Black Canary and Barbara Gordon would be this great team because they were similar yet different. And he saw it as, it was his idea that Black Canary not even know who she was working for, didn't know it was Oracle, didn't know didn't know anything about who she was working for, except that there was someone patronizing her. And that was all his idea. And eventually he convinced me to write that one shot. And about 6 pages into writing the one shot, I said, Jordan's right. This is a great team. They really do fit together well. They're because Black Canary is like a leap before you look kind of person. She's kind of reckless. And Oracle is anything but reckless. She wanted to have everything planned out. And kind of unintentionally, because the series starts at really the beginning of all of us having personal computers, all of us being on the World Wide Web. And it's the beginning of the computer age for consumers. The title sort of became about that, because Oracle, she uses all of the information she can get to plan their missions and everything else. But they always find out that the computer and the internet and the World Wide Web never had all the information, or they never had the information right. And so whenever Black Canary would land on the ground to fight some evil, sometimes she found out she was on the wrong side, or that she didn't have all the information. And that's what I like about the title, because the characters were fallible. And these days, when you see these female-centric comics, they're not fallible. They're not believable people. They're like, they're like super smart and super able and super talented, and they never make any mistakes. That's totally uninteresting. And I wanted to write female characters who were believable and real. And so
you prefer errant heroes?
Yeah. Well, they're like the rest of us. They make mistakes. And the thing is, this was a theme throughout Birds of Prey. I don't think the readers were ever aware of it because I never drew attention to it. But it was just the fact that and look, we're living in 2021, and we know now you can't trust the internet.
Of course.
But nobody knew it then because it was the age of information, and it was the information superhighway, and we were all going to have access to all of human knowledge, and we know now that's a complete lie. That's just not the way it is. But Birds of Prey was the first, as far as I know, the first fictional thing to actually deal with that subject.
In which issue you introduced Huntress?
Oh boy! Well, she came in that first miniseries.
Manhunt. It was.
Yeah. She came in that first miniseries. It was funny because Jordan was such a proponent for Birds of Prey getting a monthly that he called me one day and he says there was a miniseries canceled. It's a 4-issue miniseries, but we still have room at the printers for a book. Would you write a Birds of Prey 4-issue miniseries to fill this printing gap? So I did. I had almost no time to begin it, and I just started writing, and he just jammed it in there in one of the editorial meetings because I always call him the mother of the Birds of Prey because the way he pushed that book so hard. But boy, he was right. It was a huge success for DC and continues to be so with movies and all the rest of it.
And the TV series?
Yeah, the TV series. That was sad.
God.
What? But it has some good things. The series. For example, the Oracle was good. The rest, let's say, it was controversial.
Yeah.
And this, what do you think of this idea of this new Birds of Prey with including Harley Quinn as a Birds of Prey?
Well, they just kind of use it as a blanket title now, to put a bunch of female characters together. So it doesn't really bear any relation to what I wrote. It's just a blanket title, which, when we started Birds of Prey, we didn't have a title. And I think someone in marketing suggested Birds of Prey. We just went around DC and says, anybody have an idea for a name for this book? Because we didn't want to call it Black Canary and Oracle because Black Canary had just had a book of her own canceled. So we wanted a cover-all title. And I think it was Frank Pittarese. He worked on staff at DC, and he said, "What about Birds of Prey?" We were like, "That's pretty good. That's pretty good."
There were another titles that you were juggling.
I can't remember them. They're all awful. As soon as we heard Birds of Prey, we were like, "Yeah, that's the one. That's good. That fits."
Batman's Angels, for example.
Yeah, something like that. I'm sure that was on the list. I'm absolutely certain that was on the list.
Here's Elias says your history of Black Canary, Oracle, and the Birds of Prey with draws of Gary Frank. It's one of the best comics I ever read. I really enjoy it.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it was a lot of fun to write. I'll tell you, all of that stuff was fun.
Yeah. Also, you got as I said, you have a lot of you tell me, but I think you had a lot of complications by the time you had to write the stories because of the crossovers. When I read your books, I realized that there were a lot of crossovers. Ones that were awesome, like Hunt for Oracle. That was one of the best crossovers with Birds of Prey and Nightwing, and I think it was Robin also. It's amazing. It's an amazing arc, and others that were just messing with the story. It was like, okay, I gotta read this time because I gotta pass to the next issue and to the next arc.
Right.
Was this an obstacle for you with Birds of Prey or?
No, if it was a crossover I was doing on my own, like Hunt for Oracle was, between Nightwing and Birds of Prey. I did another one about the Brotherhood of the Fist, and that ran through 4 titles that I wrote myself. those were easy for me because they were like, a month, 2-month or a month-long epic, all told in one big story across several titles. But even when we did the big crossovers like Nightfall and Contagion and 1 Million and things like that, I always worked way ahead of schedule. Way ahead of schedule. So if a crossover came along and interrupted my story, I could make adjustments. For an example, when Scott McDaniel started Nightwing, I had written the first 12 issues before he ever started drawing.
Whoa.
Because I was ahead on all my other books. And so I just wrote Nightwing for like 3 months and just got way ahead. And that's the way I worked. So if a crossover came along, I might have to move an arc and write like a standalone story to fill in the spot, things like that. But it was never a problem because I knew well in advance what I had to do.
Oh.
So I liked the crossovers. They were like writing feature films. It was like a big story.
Speaking about how you write comics, how's your working method with the artist? You give them the full script, or you give them the plot?
No, it's full script, but I'm very flexible. I don't, I don't get out the script when I get the artwork back and compare them. As long as it looks good, it is. I always tell my artists, if you make me look like a genius, we'll get along fine. Because the artist spends so much more time with the work than I do. It may take me 20 minutes to write a page that an artist is going to spend all day on. And so they need to have a say. It's a very collaborative medium. People say, what's more important, the writing or the art? They're both important. One is not more important than the other. They go together. And that's the best comics, is when they go together, mesh perfectly. So I'm very flexible. When Scott Beatty and I wrote Robin Year One, we didn't know who was going to draw it. And we wrote the whole script for the first issue. And then we saw Javier Pulido's artwork. And we went, we got to rewrite this issue because this guy's storytelling is so good that we don't need a lot of these words. We don't need a lot of this conversation we had because he'll put it across in the pictures. So we rewrote the whole issue with Javier in mind, and I think it turned out pretty cool. So, it's and the thing is, by working well ahead of schedule, I had time to make adjustments like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you now you speak about year one. You are the one. I think you are the one of the writers that did most of the year ones I ever read, because you did. I remember 3. That was Robin, Batgirl, and Nightwing.
Right.
And you didn't do the Huntress. Huntress was
No.
Paul Levitz.
Yeah, that wasn't me. Yeah,
I think it was Paul Levitz.
I think you're right.
What was writing, for example, Batgirl? Because it was a character that you didn't work till that time. You work as an oracle. You work on, I think, on Detective Comics in the 0 issue,
Right.
but you didn't work full assignment on that character.
Well, doing Robin Year One, which is where we started, was really Scott Beatty's idea. He thought that why is there only Batman Year One? Why doesn't everybody have a Year One? Because wouldn't it be a good idea to have like one stop to introduce you to this character? And he thought each DC character should have a Year One. So we proposed Robin Year One. It took a while to convince them at DC because Batman Year One is held up in such high esteem that they thought nothing could ever match it. And I said, well, I'm not worried about matching it. I just think that this should continue as a series. So you have a whole bookshelf of every DC character's Year One. I mean, the Flash, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, whoever. So we have this extensive origin of each character as like a reference library almost. And so Robin year one was extraordinarily successful. And then we moved on to Batgirl year one, which was even more successful. Batgirl year one is the only comic I've ever worked on where the sales went up with each issue. Each issue, the sales went up dramatically. So issue 4 outsold issue 1. That's unheard of in American comics because word of mouth got around. And a lot of it is Scott, because he's such a continuity geek. He's so into DC that he was able to mine for these little nuggets, these little gems of information that we could make part of the story. And of course, fans love that. If they go, oh, I remember that, even if they've forgotten it, then our story reminded them. And the only geeky thing I got to put in Batgirl year one was in Batgirl's first appearance in Detective Comics, she goes to a costume party as Batgirl. The backup story in that issue was an elongated man story in which he and his wife also go to a costume party. Yeah. And I said to Scott, I said, okay, when we do that part of the story, they have to be at the same costume party. so there's a panel where you see Ralph and Sue Dibney in the background, and that made me happy. That made the nerd inside of me very happy. But the year ones, all 3 year ones, I mean, I could not have written them the way they were written alone. Scott really does get a lot of credit. We really did work really terrifically together. There was a real energy created between the two of us.
Yeah, especially the art of the Robin and Batgirl is so simple and so amazing. I don't remember the artist.
Marcos Martin was on Batgirl. The word I use is elegant. Both those guys, their work was so elegant.
It was the most similar to the Bruce Timm series. It was like reading a comic book of the series, and I love it. It was awesome.
Yeah,
they
were both Javier and Martin just amazing storytellers, and we took every advantage of that we could.
I love when from Batgirl the other day on my Instagram I posted one of the panels I loved, that it was then when Batman and Robin meet for the first time. Batgirl, Robin says she's just a girl, and Batgirl smiles and says, just a girl. I'm gonna kick your ass.
Sir, one of my favorite pages of anything I've ever worked on is the page where Robin surprises her by kissing her. It's one of my favorite pages.
There's a lot of cool moments there on the series. There's moments that one read when you read for the first time, maybe you don't get it, but when you reread it, it's like you got, oh, look at this! It's look what they did here. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Thank you,
sir. I want to ask you about, of course, of the Bat family, and talking about the issues and talking about brothers in arms. I want to ask you about what do you think about Two-Face? Because Two-Face is a very common enemy for the Robins.
Yeah, I don't really know where that started. I always used Two-Face, he just hated Robin even more than he hated Batman for some reason. And of course, the whole thing of his whole theme of the number 2, he wanted to knock off Batman's number 2. He wanted to turn the dynamic duo into, a single act. I like Two-Face. Two-Face is the only character that I had a disagreement with Denny O'Neil about, but I didn't. I bowed to his judgment. I wrote the character the way he wanted. But to my mind, he said that Two-Face would never cheat, that if he flipped that coin, he would go with whatever way that coin went. And I said, nah, he just flip it again. or he find some other way to get what he wanted. The whole thing with the duality and the number 2, to me, just he's a psychopath. He's not going to adhere even by his own rules. And I wrote a Two-Face story. It was in No Man's Land, and it it had Two-Face cheating at cards, and Two-Face's entire deck was all deuces. They were all twos. And this gets revealed as the cards get spilled on the floor. Well, the artist drew a full deck of cards. And then he called me and he was yelling at me. Oh, you don't like Two-Face the way I wanted you to do him, so you did this. And I said, Denny, read the script. Read the script. In the script, it says they're all deuces. The artist didn't do it right. And then he read the script and he called back and apologized. Because I said I would never write Two-Face the way I want because you're the boss. I'm going to write it the way you think it should be written.
Sir, it was hard working with him with Denny.
No, he was a sweetheart. Except he would get upset about Batman things. If he thought you were getting it wrong, he would get mad. The rest of the time, I loved working with him. I loved working.
He loved the character, right? He loved the character.
God, he loved Batman. He loved Batman, and he was very jealous of it. He was very, he saw himself as a steward. He was very protective of the property to make sure that Batman was always seen as heroic. And he would get upset when he would see, like in a crossover, if they treated Batman, made him more violent than he should be. I mean, it's the whole reason we did Nightfall, was to show the readers that a more violent Batman was not preferable to classic Batman.
Well, now you mentioned, we gotta speak about one of the best arcs, we go sagas that when I begin reading comics, I got into, and it was the saga that, like Death of Superman, like Emerald Twilight, that got me into comics.
Mm-hmm.
It was Nightfall.
Yep.
This saga, this saga has this villain, Mr. Bane.
Yep.
How you and I think it was created by you and Graham Nolan.
Yes.
How do you come up with Bane? Why do you come up with
Bane? Well, when Denny told us about the Nightfall, the idea that Bruce Wayne Batman would be put out of commission for like 2 years. He'd get his back broken and he would not be Batman. He'd have to be replaced. When Denny told us about it, he said, we're going to create a new villain to do this. There's nobody in Batman's rogues gallery that fits the bill for this. We got to create a new guy. And hopefully when Nightfall's over with, he'll be a permanent member of the Batman rogues gallery. And all of us are like, wow, that's a tall order. That's going to be hard to do. And so when we began Nightfall, we began setting up Nightfall. Long before the readers knew Nightfall was coming, we were setting it up. So our first summit was all about those issues leading up to the beginning of Nightfall. And we didn't really talk about the villain. We came up with a name for him, Doc Toxic. And the only thing we knew about him is that he had to be Batman's intellectual and physical equal. And also he would be addicted to Venom, the super steroid that Denny had created.
Yeah.
And that's all we knew about it. So as we...
Sorry. After you continue, Denny said to you that he was the man in charge to broke the bat, or
yeah,
it was.
Well, what happened was, as we got closer to actually having to have this character appear in the comics, we held a mini summit. It was only a few of us there, and the whole idea was to create this new villain. And on the first day, I said, this is really going to be hard, because for Nightfall to work, this villain has to be popular. The readers have to respond to him. They got to love him. They got to hate him. They got to believe him. And they got to think he's worthy of this role of basically putting Batman out of commission. And I said, how do you do that? I mean, how do you assure that he's going to be popular? What do we do? What magic, do we put here? Because if we could create popular characters, we would create them all the time. So Denny said, look, if you think it's going to be so damn hard, then you go home and do it. And we just stopped talking about the character. And he sent me home. I knew Graham was going to draw the issue, the special. So I called Graham and we just talked a few things out. Graham came up with the idea for the Mexican luchadora wrestler look because he was going to be, from a Caribbean island. He was going to be Hispanic. And we knew, that was something we thought of. And then I sort of took Man in the Iron Mask. And then I read an article in the newspaper about how in North Korea, if they couldn't catch a criminal, they put his family in jail. And his family would serve the sentence. So a son might serve the sentence of his father, pay for his father's crimes. And I thought, well, what kind of kid would that produce? And then I thought, well, what if you were born to serve the life sentence of your father? You never knew it. You were born in prison. What kind of adult would come out the other end of that? And I thought, well, this is good. I'm telling myself this is good because it mirrors Batman's origin, because Batman, his adult life is all determined by a childhood trauma. And here, this character is going to have a childhood trauma that went on for his entire childhood. His childhood was hell. And if he survived that, he'd be the toughest bastard on the planet to survive this. And then I needed a name. So I went to the thesaurus and I looked up the word evil. and there was Bane, right? So I called my editors at DC and I said, I want to call him Bane. And they said, oh, we hate that. That's a dumb name. So I said, well, let's just call him that for now and see what happens. And 3 days later, everybody was calling him Bane, and we never thought of calling him anything else. So that's how I created it. It was just sweating it out. It was just trying to bring in all of the disparate elements to build a character that would last. But he's lasted way past what I ever imagined would happen with him.
He was a huge beast. Huge beast.
Yeah, but he was smart. That's what made him work. Because Denny was upset that Superman had just been killed by basically a monster, like a giant space bug, who was ultimately forgettable. And Denny didn't want us to do that. He wanted us to create a character worthy of defeating Batman, and then would go on.
And why was this time? Why was the idea of defeating Batman or broken, or one of the questions that here are doing the subscriber is why broke Batman's back? Why broke his back and not kill him, for example, or do other thing?
Well, we had just killed Superman. And so killing Batman would seem okay, they have no other ideas. And Denny liked the idea of a man who's broken. He's literally broken. And if any Batman has no superpowers. He has no mutant healing ability. If Batman was going to come back from an injury that bad, only Batman could do it. Only a man as driven as Bruce Wayne could manage this. And it said everything about Batman. It was so Batman-centric, this idea that he would have this horrific injury. My concern was, I always think about logistics. Like, how do you make this believable? And so my sister-in-law is an ICU nurse. And I said, if you got your spine broken, what would need to happen within the next few hours to make sure you weren't paralyzed for life? And she told me all about the medications, which is what we presented in the issue following him getting his back broken, where Robin and Alfred are desperately trying to get this special pharmaceutical to inject in Bruce Wayne's spine because, he will not go to the hospital. So Alfred and Robin are the only ones left to treat him. And so I had to find out, well, what would that look like? What would that entail? And that's why we broke him rather than killed him. Because even today, killing a comic book character it's a cliche. Killing Superman made sense because he's a god, and killing a god is like, wow, there's nothing more dramatic than that. but
Breaking
Breaking Batman fit in with who Batman is, and having him come back and then having him be replaced for a time, and seeing that no one can be Batman, only Bruce Wayne can be Batman.
Yeah. Yes.
Did you enjoy? Go ahead, Mario.
Yes, it was the same question you're going to ask. Did you enjoy the last movie, the Batman: The Dark Knight Rises, about the character and all the things?
I like that they made him a household name. I mean, all you have to do is do this, and everybody knows who you are. So they made him a household name. I'm not that big a fan of any of the Batman movies, really. I like that they showed that he was a mastermind, that he was a thinker. But I just think the perfect movie Bane is in the future. We haven't seen it yet.
Mm-hmm.
What about the Schumacher movie?
He looked great. That scene where he deadlifts the bat signal is awesome, but the rest of it's crap. It's just a bad boy. They just went off the rails on those movies.
And sir, what about the Batman: The Mystery of the Batwoman, and the animated one? That he's the main character too there.
Yeah, I like the animated versions better than any of them. I mean, when they made the first version of Bane in the animated series, and Henry Silva did his voice, I was thrilled. And then when Danny Trejo did his voice later, I thought this is awesome. So, but they were the most faithful to the comic.
I think Hector Elizondo did his voice right.
I don't know. You mean in the Batwoman one?
Yes,
That's
I think
possible. That's possible. I know Michael Dorn did. There's been so many, I can't keep track. He's appeared a lot.
He's doing a team up with the Penguin. I think.
Yeah.
A team up.
He's appeared in so many things. He's in the Lego movies. He's everywhere.
Such a great movie. Such a great movie.
Yeah.
Mr. Dixon, after you guys broke the bat, and you had to do this and put this replacement that was supposed to be a bad Batman.
Right.
Why?
Jean-Paul.
What was something that most people asked was why Jean-Paul and not Dick Grayson? Besides the idea, this idea that you guys have of it has to be a bad Batman, but there for the reader it was the straightforward decision. Here, I can't be Batman. Here's the mantle.
Well, Bruce had met Jean-Paul and he had seen him as Azrael, and he thought he recognized something of himself in him. And he saw him as obsessed as Bruce Wayne was. He didn't realize that obsession grew from being a psychopath, that he would take it too far. I think the reason we discussed why he wouldn't take Dick Grayson, we never made this clear in the comics, but to ourselves we had to justify it, is because Dick Grayson had his own life. He had other things to distract him. And Bruce felt that he wouldn't give being Batman 100% the way Azrael would. But unfortunately, Bruce didn't understand what that meant. Azrael is very much a Denny O'Neil type character. He's deeply flawed. He's racked with guilt. He's like a failed religious figure. He's a zealot. He doesn't know when to stop taking things too far. And he thinks he's doing good, but he's not. He thinks he's the good guy in the story, but he's not. And it was terrific to build off him. And the best thing about it is that we showed the fans this is not the kind of Batman you want. You always say you want this tough, lethal Batman, but now look what it means. Look what it means. And you wouldn't want that. And readers agreed because they stopped buying the book. Our sales were terrible. They hated Jean-Paul, and we actually had to bring Dick Grayson back. Prodigal was brought in so that Bruce Wayne could remain out of commission, but they would have a Batman they liked in a classic Batman costume.
Yeah,
A lot of fans
Prodigal
love
was
that.
Prodigal was like an epilogue of Nightfall
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it was Batman taking over the mantle again, Jean Paul leaving the mantle,
Right.
and retaking the Azrael mantle from in other regular run, and Prodigal was this for the first time Dick Grayson taking the mantle.
Right. It was very
And
popular. Fans loved it.
fans love it, and it was. Why do you think it was a short for a short time? This.
Well, we wanted to bring Bruce Wayne back on schedule. So we got Jean Paul out of the way, replaced him with Dick Grayson for the same period of time, so that we could more logic, because we had all the story with Bruce Wayne, traveling the world, healing, the meditation, the Dr. Consolving story. We had all that planned out. So we didn't want to get rid of that. So we just got rid of Jean Paul early, put Dick Grayson in, and Bruce Wayne continued his odyssey toward returning to full strength. And so, that's really the reason why it was cut short. Is Prodigal is like the last few months of what would have been Jean Paul Valley's story.
Yeah.
So, because we had to do something, because sales seriously were falling off because they didn't like the character.
Did you ever think about being Dick Grayson, the one who defeat the Jean Paul instead of Bruce Wayne?
I almost would have preferred that. I don't, Denny's gone now, rest in peace. But I don't like the way Denny concluded things. In fact, when Denny was writing that story where Bruce Wayne finally confronts Jean Paul Valley in the Batcave, and they basically talk it out. Denny called me on a Saturday when he was writing it, and this was very unusual. It was unusual for Denny to ever call me, and it was really unusual on a weekend. I can't think of another time. And he says, I'm in the middle of writing this. This is what I have. What would you do? And I said, I would write the most epic knockdown, drag-out fight ever written in a comic. I mean, it would be Hulk versus the Thing. It would be Thor versus Ulick. It would be, and at the end of it, the Batcave is trashed because these two are going at it with all of Batman's weaponry. And he said, well, I don't want to do it that way. And I said, you had to know when you called me that I was going to say exactly what I just said, right? And he said, yeah, I knew. And he goes, but that's not the way I want to do it. And I said, well, it's your character. You say goodbye to him however you want. And so he did it. But I just think it would have been better with a more, kind of samurai movie ending.
Destroying the Batcave.
Yeah, just start all over again.
Actually, it was this kind of ending. It was used in other stories in the future. I think for example, Scott Snyder, Batman Run, when he fights the Joker and destroy all the Batcave. Also, I think it was Tom King's también. Also, Tom King's run. He uses Bane, and now that I mentioned Tom King, have you read Tom King's run with Bane?
Yeah, I read it.
What do you think? What do you think?
It's not my Bane. I felt it was kind of under dramatized. It kind of, it's hard to follow what we did on Nightfall. I understand that. My thing was, why did they try? Why did they try to basically do a remake? I don't get that.
And that was what I felt. It was a remake of Nightfall, very slow pace, very emotional, very psychologically.
Yeah. Yeah, because when Denny laid out Nightfall for myself and Doug and Alan, we were like, whoa, there's so many great scenes here. There's so many great dramatic high points. There's so many milestones in this story. We couldn't wait to get home and start writing it because it was so jam-packed, especially after spending 3 days together throwing ideas around. I mean, we had ideas we couldn't even use. We had so many ideas. And, and to get to play with the whole Batman universe like that, and to then revisit it and just sort of shrink it down to what he did. I don't get it. I don't know. Why would you do that?
It was an alternative version about
Yeah, it was
the Chuck Dixon cut.
Release the Chuck Dixon cut.
There you go.
And one last question about Nightfall. That was something that we all love. Was that this character Bane endured through time, and it was a huge success in many mediums.
Yeah.
And did you when you created you told us that you didn't expect this reception, but
No, I thought we'd see him every once in a while in the comics. Like whenever they needed a big tough guy, they could use Bane, instead of KG Beast, because the KGB was over with. So I thought he's kind of a replacement, and that's what he would be. He would just be a big tough guy they would use every once in a while.
A henchman.
No idea. Yeah, well, not necessarily a henchman, because we did write him smarter than that.
Yeah, right, but they needed a henchman.
Yeah, he wouldn't even follow Ra's al Ghul's orders. I mean, this guy was a rebel.
Of course.
But I mean, who could imagine? Who could imagine that he would be a permanent member? He'd be up there with characters created decades before. I mean, I still can't get my head around it. I still can't believe that happened.
And also you got the chance to get back to the character a couple of years ago in a miniseries with also Graham Nolan called the Bane Conquest.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that series?
Well, the creation of that series involved a lot of lawyers because we didn't feel we had been compensated enough money from Dark Knight Rises, and part of the settlement is that we do a Bane maxi series. We actually proposed 24 issues because we knew they'd cut it back to 12, and so part of the deal was that they pay us to do a new Bane miniseries that we would control, and it wouldn't be in continuity, and it would be all our own thing, and we were completely left alone on it. No editorial changes whatsoever. Of course, we didn't take advantage of that fact. I think we did a pretty good story, and we sort of advanced Bane's story to where we wanted it to be, to where he's a major global international crime figure.
Yeah, that was awesome. I read it, and it was a huge advance for the character. A huge grown for the character. Yeah. For Bane. I really love it.
And we finally got to do. Graham always wanted to do the Batman submersible boat, and so we finally got to do it. We never got to do it when we were on Detective, so we finally got to do it there.
And what do you think it would be the next step in the future for Bane?
Well, Bane is a guy that likes to be on top. I mean, when he was in Santa Prisca, he ran the prison. When he shows up in Gotham, he wants to run Gotham. Now that he's a big international crime figure, he's basically destroyed Cobra and replaced it. He's got to fight to stay on top. So it would be other villains trying to displace him while he, fights to maintain his criminal empire. If we ever got to do it, we wanted to call it Bane Triumphant.
Oh, like the movie, like the Batman movie.
Batman Triumph.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
And one more thing we would like to speak about that I had to speak about this. It's your Nightwing run, sir.
Yeah.
Your Nightwing run, it was one of the best Nightwing runs I read since since the 90s.
Sí.
It still is one of the best things I read from Nightwing. And uh, how how do how do you start writing this? You said you write the first 12 issues, but how do you begin to write this series? And what was the main idea of the whole run?
Well, my editor was Scott Peterson, who I loved working with. And originally, the series was going to be co-written by Denny O'Neil and Alan Grant. And for whatever reason, they decided they didn't want to do it. But it was already scheduled. So Scott called and said, "Would you want to write Nightwing?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." He goes, "Well, you got 3 weeks to do the first issue. You got to start cold." And I said, "Well, what's the series about?" And he goes, "Well, Dick Grayson moves to a new town called Bloodhaven." And I said, "What's Bloodhaven like?" And they said, "We don't know. It's up to you." And I said, "Well, what's he doing there?" And he says, "Well, he's just fighting crime, you know." And they said, and his main villain will be Blockbuster. Blockbuster is the criminal kingpin of Bloodhaven. So I wrote an essay. That's the first thing I did was wrote an essay creating Bloodhaven, what the city was like, what it would look like, its origins, everything else. So we would all understand that this was not Gotham at all. And then my other thing was that what was my approach to Nightwing? Nightwing is not Batman Jr. Nightwing is his own character. Dick Grayson is his own person. So I came up with a way that he talked. He talked more casually than Batman. He generally was just more casual than Batman. He was more of a natural athlete than Batman would ever be. And he was basically born with the genetics to be Nightwing. And so when all that was done, I said this to Scott Peterson, my editor. I said, so what else do you want to add here? And he said, make every issue a Jackie Chan movie. And I said, well, with Scott McDaniel as my artist, that isn't going to be a problem. And so I just started writing. And, I created basically 2 6-issue stories that joined to become one huge 12-issue story. And it's very much police procedural, a crime epic. We have the origins of a lot of new villains, because I didn't want to use all of Batman's villains. I wanted to create a whole new Rose Gallery. So almost every issue has a new villain for him to face. And because I was able to write the first 12 issues before Scott McDaniel began drawing, Scott Peterson and I were able to go back over them and just sort of tighten everything up. So it really is one big story. There's no plot holes. It's seamless. And we had the luxury of doing that because we had time. And it's one of the proudest things I've ever worked on because of that, because I had the time to really get into the character, get into the situations. The Dudley Soames character becoming Torque, the introduction of the phony Nightwing, Tad Ryerson, all that stuff was possible because I had the time that you normally don't have on a comic. And
you created a universe, a very big universe for the character.
Yeah, I mean, Bloodhaven was a blast because I created it as like the biggest loser city in the world. It was originally a whaling town, and then they got into asbestos. It's a town that made every wrong choice. And I also made it a town that the trains ran through it, the freeway ran past it, but nobody ever stopped. If you got to Bloodhaven, you just kept driving. It was a town nobody wanted to go to. I mean, a lot worse than Gotham and totally corrupt. See, in Gotham, the police were honest. In Bloodhaven, everybody was crooked. So it was just a lot of fun to write.
So also, it's the most dangerous city of DC.
Yes. Yeah, it was a real sewer, just a rotten place. And then they nuked it. So
yeah, there was a lot of similarities, especially with Blockbuster, with the Kingpin from Marvel.
Yeah,
you got and also Dick Grayson as Daredevil or Spider-Man. It has some of these ingredients that makes him more likable for the reader.
Yeah, but the beauty of it is that Dick Grayson is so much better adjusted than Peter Parker or Matt Murdock. He's like Catwoman. He likes himself. He's okay with himself. So, which is rare in a superhero.
Yeah. Your run, it was a run that let the character grow a lot.
Yeah.
A lot, and did a lot of good for the character, because what you did on that series with Scott McDaniel was used and was replicated in future series, and it was like settled like this. Okay, blockbuster is blockbuster and is in Blue Haven. You got this villain. You got what you said. One of the questions I want to ask you was, what about how did you come up with Tad, with the phony Nightwing?
I like the idea of a guy like who wants to be a masked vigilante, but he doesn't have the best motives, and he's not all that bright. He just goes overboard. He doesn't understand. I mean, because I think that's what would really happen. The kind of person that would put on a mask and go out and fight crime at night would have to be a little bit nuts. And I just like the idea that Nightwing had this, fan who was dangerous. So, and I also like the fact that he picked his costume off the rack. He just uses a hockey jersey. He puts his name on it, and he spells it wrong.
That was awesome. When you can just feel pity and sympathy, and at the same time for Tad, because he was a fan of Nightwing and he wanted to do things right, but he did it wrong.
Right.
That was the thing with Tad, and to close the Nightwing chapter, what is the best couple for you for Nightwing? Huntress or Barbara Gordon?
Well, Barbara is the girl he should be with, and Huntress is the girl he should stay away from. So I like the idea of this. Huntress is sort of a tormented, lapsed Catholic, and she just becomes obsessed with Dick Grayson, and it's not healthy. And he eventually figures out that this isn't the kind of woman he should be with. That Barbara's the girl for him.
Nowadays he's called a toxic girl. So
yeah, there you go.
A toxic girl.
They call it toxic girl.
Because in your run you played a lot with both, with Barbara, with Huntress.
Yeah.
Especially there was a mini series, 4 issues, that there was a Nightwing Huntress that you developed of the relationship between them, and it was pretty cool and very good.
Yeah, to me, Huntress is one of those characters. When she shows up, it's like, oh man, now okay, it's hit the fan now. The Huntress is here, because you never knew what she was going to do, and she was perfectly capable of being lethal, and which is a no-no with the Batman characters. And that's what I liked about her. She was, I mean, I'm the one that brought her back into Batman continuity. The editors didn't necessarily want her back, and I just love this character, and she has to be part of our family again. And Graham and I brought her back in the issue, and the readers loved it, so we kept on doing it. And then we got to change her costume, because I've hated every Huntress costume except the one that Graham eventually gave her. So it's because we restored the crucifix and we covered her up more. She's a Catholic girl. She's not going to run around half naked.
Mr. Dixon, was that when Paul Levitz was on DC, or?
Yeah, it was Paul Levitz and Joe Staton did they because originally some reason in continuity the Huntress in like Imaginary Tales was Catwoman and Batman's daughter.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so Paul Levitz brought her into continuity as a new character, Helena Bertinelli, a mafia princess turned masked crime fighter. It's a great idea, which I just ran with.
So, Mr. Dixon, to end the interview, and we don't want to bother you anymore, we have this. Let me see. Oh, these 3 comics that you wrote. I'm gonna leave Mario the Flash one because he's a huge fan of this one. I'm gonna speak about the others. Mario.
Well, sir, also one of the people on the chat here, Agustin is a huge fan of Flash, and he told me, please ask Mr. Dixon about the adventures of Flash in Argentina. So I want to talk about this issue, this annual of the Flash.
No.
So I want to ask you, why did you put Flash into Argentina?
Well, the at that time the annuals all had a theme, and that summer the annuals were international, and so they wanted to show superheroes that were from other countries other than the United States. And originally another writer was assigned this Flash annual, and Kike Alcatena was always part of it. He was always going to be the artist. Well, for some reason, the writer bailed. He wasn't going to write it. And the editor was at a loss. And he never said this, but I'm pretty sure Kike said, why don't you get Chuck to write it? Because we had worked together. And so I get this thing dumped on me, and there's no time to write it. I've got like a week to write a whole annual. And so I called Kike on the phone, which was an expensive proposition back then. And
at that time,
I said, Kike, help me out here. And Kike's English is better than mine. I said, Kike, help me. I've got to write Argentinian superheroes. I don't even know where to begin. I said, help me out here. And so he created all the characters.
Yeah.
And he named them and created them in costume and then explained them to me, why they were significant, why these superheroes were Argentinian and no other country. And so, I literally could not have done it without him, because if I had done it without him, everybody in Argentina would hate me because I would get everything wrong. I would insult all of you without meaning to. So.
Sir, when we're talking about this annual of the Flash, we are asking why didn't you introduce also the Gaucho? The Gaucho is one of the from Batman Inc. character.
I don't know. Maybe Kike just didn't want to go there. Maybe that was too obvious. I don't know. Certainly I knew about Gauchos. I visited. I spent time in Argentina, and in '87, guest of the Villagrans. So I learned all about the Gauchos back then. But yeah, we did. But I wasn't about to suggest anything. I thought Kike's going to know what works and what doesn't. What's going to seem cool and what won't. And I love working with Kike. He's one of my favorite artists. The guy can do any genre. We did Conan together. We did Predator. We did Batman. Alien Legion. He's just an incredible talent.
Sir, all the characters that you wrote are from our folklore, our history, our urban legends here, because we have these countries it has many whole stories.
Right.
In the
legends,
countryside,
legends, stories,
urban legends in the countryside. Like the westerns, but here it is different, right? But it's like cowboys, but southern,
right?
Southern boys,
right?
with European things, and all the characters are urban legends, and here.
Yeah.
And the other story, the backstory with at Hawkman and the other
Salamanca.
Salamanca and the other. The main the it was a soldier in our time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a kind of soldier from a government, because we have problems with governments in here.
Well, we're having problems here too.
No, but in that time, we have two sides here.
No, look, I spent a month in Buenos Aires, and I've never been anywhere that was as politically polarized in my life until this year in the United States. So we're like Buenos Aires was in 1987 now. But
Whoa.
yeah, because it was like, well, I want to visit this artist. Oh, you don't want to visit him. And it was because he was on the other side of the political spectrum. And I said, well, I still want to meet him.
Well, that kind of when Kike drew that, it's like two characters. One exists, and the other is a fictional character called Inodoro Pereira from Roberto Fontana Rosa, a writer and an artist here in Argentina. Here in the home, I'm from a town called Rosario City.
Okay.
Here, and he's from here. He was, because he passed away, and he's looked like Inodoro Pereira and another character. He was a warlord here in Argentina called Quiroga.
Okay.
So he has his likeness.
Ah, okay.
That villain.
See, that would be lost on me.
Another thing that was published here in Argentina for the first time in the 90s, when they published DC Comics here by Editorial Perfil, was this comic. This comic.
Oh yeah.
This comic. This was an awesome comic that everybody remembers with cherish. I got it signed by Kike Alcatena when I met him, and it's a classic here because it was like one of the best stories written. Written, and you got the Joker with a
pirate thing.
It's amazing. You got Robin, you got Catwoman. It's unbelievable. You got Catwoman.
Yeah.
It was. Can we say, Mr. Dixon? It was like Pirates of the Caribbean Sun, but with Batman and the Bat Family.
Yeah, well, what it was, I mean, again, the annuals that summer were Elseworlds, and you could write in any genre or time period. And I was like, pirates. I want pirates. I've got to have pirates. And I've got to have Kike Alcatena on it, because I wanted it to look like Howard Pyle. Howard Pyle, great American illustrator, who did a lot of tremendous work. He did a whole book of pirates. And I knew that Kike would know who Howard Pyle was. And I knew he'd capture that Howard Pyle feel, and sort of very grounded, very realistic, not a swashbuckler story, but a realistic period pirate story with Batman in it. And then we just kind of went wild. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but when Jose Garcia Lopez found out that there was going to be a Batman pirate story, he asked to draw it, and I had to turn him down, which hurt. But I wanted Kike on it. I didn't want him. I didn't want an Errol Flynn movie. I wanted an honest-to-gosh pirate adventure set in.
It's like Emilio Salgari's Sandokan, right?
Yeah. It's like, it's like, well, Eric Clapton wants to play with you. No, I don't think so. I mean, it really hurt, and I've never gotten to work with him. This is my only opportunity. But I'm still glad I went with Kike, because Kike just he killed it. And he did all these promo pieces. If you go to my website, chuckdixon.net, you can see some of the unpublished pieces he did. And then I don't know if you're aware, we did a 10-page follow-up story with the Penguin that was all splash pages.
No.
So,
we didn't know.
Yeah. It's all splash pages. It's a 10-page story. It's all splash pages, and it's told in pirate verse. It rhymes. It's like a sea shanty. Is how the story is told. So.
Kyle, I want to tell you something to Mr. Dixon about Argentina and Flash.
Yeah.
The same thing we did with other.
Of course. We got it's a tradition.
It's a tradition, sir. Here, the Flash, Wally West Flash, the Mike Baron era. It was a huge success here in Argentina, but the title was changed here in Argentina because they have an entertainment. A gossip magazine called Flash. So the title here, they changed the name as Flushman.
Flushman.
No, wouldn't go here. That'd be a different character here.
Yes, so that's a fun story I want to share with you, sir. Because here in Argentina, Kyle and I grew up with DC Comics, so we're doing that with things.
Here, Agustin says, amazing work in the Flash Annual. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you so much.
And there was a question that says, Chuck, what's your opinion of Tim Drake transform in Red Robin?
Well, I don't write the books anymore. They're going to do what they're going to do. I'm glad he still has a place in the DC universe. He's just simply not replaced. So that's good. I always, in my mind, thought Tim Drake would basically retire and just get a job at a big tech firm and get married and have kids. That was my future for Tim Drake.
Not the future of Batman Beyond, right?
Yeah, very much so.
And to end the interview, Mr. Dixon, can you tell us and the subscribers, what is Arkhaven Comics?
It's Arkhaven Comics is a brand new free, no money, digital comics platform. It's at arkhaven.com. We call it ArkTunes. And there's lots and lots of stories. We've only been around a few months, and we're getting close to 2 million views. And there's everything. There's horror. There's humor. We even have a comic about economics. But and there's superheroes. I'm doing a science fiction epic called Something Big, a horror series called Go Monster Go. I have a superhero series called Avalon, another superhero series called The Shade. And it's just a lot of fun. And like I said, it's free. It's high resolution. You can read it on any device. The resolution's so good, you can read it on your big screen TV in your family room if you want, because it's crystal clear. So, and emphasize again, it's free. So go check it out. I guarantee everyone listening to me, you'll find something there that you like, and you can follow it with new episodes every week.
I have left the link in the description. So
thank you.
Go ahead, check it out, guys. You got all the comic books there to read, and also Mr. Dixon's site is on the description. One of the things that I loved about the Arkhaven is that every comic has some kind of introduction by you here. Let me see. Some introduction by you.
That's a drawing of me by Sergio Cariello.
Sergio Cariello, another great artist that we loved from Deathstroke, for example, or Superman. It's awesome. But I got this one that spoke about a science fiction comic that it's on the side that it says Jack Kirby's on script, art here and exploring concepts and themes he could visit again while working for DC in the 90s, in the 70s, sorry.
Yeah.
Cloning science gone wrong and a possible precursor to the Canon project that was an important part of the Jimmy Olsen run. Everything you need to know to get in the comic and start reading. There's nothing else you need to know than this. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Well, we're gonna go here. We're gonna tell you thanks a lot, Mr. Dixon. It was
Thank you, sir.
a huge honor, a huge. I'm totally glad and totally happy to have you here, to have the chance to speak with you, and to get a chance to connect, and
Sure.
to that you have the chance to tell us all these behind the scenes stories, all these things about the creation of comics that we all as comic book fans love. And as a fan of your work, I'm very grateful. Thanks a lot for being here and for all of this comic books. Thanks a lot for a lot of hours of enjoying comics.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I mean, it's an honor to show up on a podcast from Argentina. I've got a lot of affection for Argentina and the fans down there and all of the great artists that I work with from that country. There's something in the water down there. You make some fantastic comic book artists down there. It's just amazing the level of talent. And over the years, I've been lucky enough to work with dozens of awesome people from your country. And I appreciate the support and the affection you've shown me in return. Means a lot. It means a whole lot.
Yes,
Also,
thank you, sir.
before you say something, I almost forgot. Mr. Dixon has a YouTube channel, Chuck Dixon. It's Chuck Dixon, where you can hear some. It's like a Q&A from
Yeah.
fans. You have I think it's like episode 47. You have
I recorded my 78th episode today. So
78 episode where he answered all the questions of the fans. So go ahead, subscribe his channel.
I'd love to get some questions from you folks down there for sure.
It's amazing. It's an amazing content. It's totally interesting what he talks about the comic industry, about his work and his experience. So go ahead and check it out, guys. Go ahead, Mario. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you, sir, for having this conversation with us. It's a great honor for me and from Kyle and everybody here listening to your stories. And also it's an honor for us because the pandemic, the only the only good thing did it was talking to you, be more close to all of you. And as I always say, you are our true heroes. You wrote that stories, and you are the real true heroes for us. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for create these characters that are unforgettable. Thank you, sir.
It's my pleasure. It was never a job. I loved every minute of it. Still do.
Thank you so much, sir.
And if you didn't get the message, we love you, Mr. Dixon.
Yeah, we love you so much, sir.
We totally love you.
Very kind. Very kind. Thank you so much.
So
We
we're
love
gonna
you
say
so much, sir.
we're gonna say goodbye in Spanish. And gente, muchísimas gracias por estar ahí. Gracias por estar apoyando. Suscríbanse al canal, dejen su like. Suscríbanse al canal del señor Dixon. Tienen en la descripción los links al sitio del señor Chuck Dixon y al Art Comics para leer los cómics gratuitos que escribe el señor Dixon, que están buenísimos y es una buena fuente de lectura. Así que nos estamos viendo. We're going to say goodbye. Bye, people. See you on the next protagonista de cómics. Creo que la semana que viene, next week.
Next week.
Next week.
All right.
See you guys.
Thank you.
See you.